Welcome back, Pokemon trainers, to the Wide League Charity Rumble Toys for Todd's Edition. I am Bound, so joining me is the lovely human that is Gerd. We've watched a lot of good Pokemon today, and we're not done yet. We're about to go into round 4 of our Swiss formatting. Gonna jump in very, very quickly. Gerd, it's been a good day so far. I want to ask you, what is your favorite Pokemon in Regulation H?
Regulation H? I don't know. I could say something like a Sneasler. My favorite probably has to be Dragonite. I love Dragonite in general. The funny part about it is I actually don't like the scale shot Dragonite that has been popping up primarily in dominating tournaments. I like the traditional AV Dragonite with Terrifying Terra Blast. That is the set that I typically run because I think it's really good still to be able to tank all those special type attack damages rather than taking one hit once. And
Do you,
obviously with inner focus AVD Knight, you can still be immune to those intimidates and fake outs.
do you like him?
What?
Do you like him? Look at my
Yes.
camera.
I didn't see you were actually doing it. I was looking at my camera. Yeah, I love Dragonite. Dragonite's my favorite Pokemon of all time.
So, are you a Pound Night enjoyer? Is that what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
hearing?
Oh yeah. Of course. I'll say in front of everyone, I love Powknight.
I love Pound Night.
I think Powknight got me the most points last year.
I mean that makes sense. It's extremely strong. Like Chain Power is it feels like Chain Power is like made to be Dragonite's partner.
Oh, of course. Like it's just so dominant when it was good. So less about Pow Knight players and more about the upcoming match. We have an interesting feature match for you. We have a few unique Pokemon that we don't often get to see, but have been really popping up lately in the end stage of Regulation G. We are going to be seeing Cantonian Weezing coming into this match.
Yeah, I mean, levitating gas. Neutralizing gas is a absolute monkey wrench for any Pokemon player, especially with how good abilities currently are in the state of this meta. But you also have the Iron Valiant with Covert Cloak incoming, something that we've seen a couple of times at Worlds, and not to mention the obvious thing in here, the two restricted Pokemon that we're going to see again. You've got Calyrex Shadow Rider in. Let's see what these players can do.
That we do see the Incineroar and the Rapid Strike Urshifu. The Urshifu on Mikey's side is your pretty typical Choice Scarf variant, Aqua Jet, Surging Sparks, Close Combat, U-turn. So nothing too surprising, but we do get to see the Weezing on the lead. So it is actually going to be taking out. Wait, did it actually have did it actually have Levitate, or I thought that was an error. Unless it had,
Wait,
no, it is Ability Shield. It is Ability Shield
yeah.
Incineroar. I had to make sure. So because of the Ability Shield, the Intimidate still gets to activate. And now the opposing Incineroar does, well, both the opposing Incineroar and the Urshifu do get affected by the Intimidate. It's just that if you use Surging Sparks, it's Surging Strikes, it technically still can get crits.
There's double fake out, and we are back to square one. I'm loving these nicknames, like Randy Caddage, pretty good one. You got Caesar Clown with the Wheezing, the One Piece reference. I saw a free run in there for a reference of a very good anime, very good manga, and I think that's just kind of how the team is going. But over here, you are seeing that Grass Terra come out right there for Wheezing. Sonic Queen making some very sure decisions about the way that she's going to play this.
Yeah, we gotta see what's gonna happen because the abilities are gone. The Urshifu cannot hit through Protect on any move, so you can't just get this free damage into Weezing like you normally would be able to. We do see the Terastallization. Let's see what it is going to be locking into. It is the Choice Scarf, so it will be moving first on this field, and it could be hitting extremely hard with this Water-type Surging Strikes attack. But we do see a counter Terastallization. It is going to be on the Incineroar. We are going to be seeing the Terra Grass. So if it decided to go for the Surging Strikes into this Incineroar, it's going to be taking that resistant amount of hits.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really see many of the big helping hand incoming here. It's going to be a little bit extra damage, but it probably won't. Oh, sorry. Usually, I just assume Grass Terra always goes onto Wheezing, but that is going to be that's a dead Wheezing right there. I don't think that is surviving anything with the the extra crit damage, and the helping hand as well. But the Terra Grass Incineroar is going to remain on the floor right now. The helping hand doing enough to take that one there. The Intimidate finally coming back out for the other Incineroar, knocking that attack stat down to -1, and parting shot right there to end the turn right there for Sonic Queen, directly into the Incineroar as you do, going back in there to be switched out. And not necessarily a great turn for Sonic Queen here.
Yeah, now that the Urshifu is locked into the Surging Strikes, you do have some ability to play around it. Now that you do have that Ogerpon Wellspring in the back with the Water Absorbability, you could, in theory, just continue to go for Follow Me to redirect the supposed Surging Strikes, but decides to actually go back into the Incineroar. You do have that fake out pressure into that Urshifu. Again, choice lock, so it can't go for that protect. So it either has to soak up the damage that's coming from the Calyrex and Urshifu combo, or it has to force switch out. But it looks like Sana is just going to be going for a little bit more of a defensive play, deciding to go into that Ogre Pawn with a Water Absorb on that Calyrex slot, trying to eat up an attack.
Yeah, wants to do knockoff into that Urshifu, slowing it down enough for then the Calyrex to outspeed, because at the current moment that Urshifu would have outsped with Surging Strikes and KO'd the much more frail Calyrex. But in comes the Chain Pow, boosting the damage of the Incineroar. I'm thinking you might just see a straight Flare Blitz into this other Incineroar right now, and the Ogerpon does in fact come out. And regardless, honestly, of which way this Ogerpon or the Incineroar is going to hit here, actually is going to go straight for the party shot and knocks that attack stat down for Ogerpon there. I think a Flare Blitz could have possibly picked up some good damage on either of those Pokemon there, especially because neither of them resisted.
Yeah, the parting shot just gives you the ability to pivot into something that's a little bit better. And if the Calyrex were to stay in the field, it would have taken that special attack drop, but now that the Ogremon is switching, is now taking that physical attack drop. So it's a win-win situation, and you get to reset that Intimidate for later. There's no more wheezing, so the Intimidate will land on whatever is going to be switching it. Because the Ogrepon currently is in, if you were to go back into that Incineroar, you would get it the Ogerpon at -2 attack, which could be very helpful later on because now you have this Terapagos. If you were to go for a terrestrialization, it would be one of the tankiest Pokemon on the field. And mind you, in the matchup with Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and Terapagos, it is very favored for Terapagos unless you have a way to actually hit this Terapagos through its normal typing.
And right, just like that, you're gonna see Icicle Crash miss because it is a low accuracy move for the game. Ivy Cutter coming out, knocking a little bit of that damage on there for Soup. Doesn't get the crit, the high crit damage there, and there goes Terra Starstorm and hits that Incineroar, but doesn't have the boost to knock into that. Flavor is gonna come out and take down that Chain Pow into that one there, waiting on the switch in there, but pretty solid turn in there from Sonic Queen. But again, Terapagos is going to recover a little bit of that health, and if it gets back up to that Terra Shell for the second time, it's going into a Calyrex, which, like you said before, very much likes it for itself.
Yep. Surprisingly, the Incineroar is still going to be hanging on even after that Flare Blitz and taking additional damage from that Terra Starstorm in its base form from Terapagos. We do see this Urshifu now being able to switch in, and you have to now consider what are your options in terms of attacking. If you attack now, you're locking into a move that could either be immune on one end or do a lot of damage. You have that close combat hits into both Pokemon fairly strong, but then you are unable to hit that Calyrex in the back if it weren't able to Terrestrialize, which you can't because you already have Terra Grass. We do see the U-turn now trying to get an additional pivot. Urshifu now going into the back again, force switching something else in from the back and doing a decent amount of damage into this Ogerpon already.
I think that was a little bit of a mistake. There's not really a reason for a Surging Strikes to come out in that situation, and it looked like the follow me was to try to eat the Surging Strikes and get some of that health back. But the U-turn doing a good amount of damage in there, and then being the reason that Ogerpon faints right there from a Terra Starstorm as well. And the follow me just feeling like a really bad misplay on that part because you're now down to a really unfavorable matchup.
Yeah, now so you have the Calyrex in the back. It is a focus sash Calyrex, which might not matter in the situation unless you got hit by a knockoff. But even if you get hit by the knockoff, you go down to your focus sash at 1 HP. You're more than likely going to get picked off by this Terrapagos on the other side. And there has been no terrestrialization at all. So you could go for Terra Star Storm on its stellar terrestrialization. But I think Sauna recognizes the situation that they're in, deciding to throw in the towel. There's realistically no way that the Calyrex from this position just can deal enough damage, not only to this Terrapagos, which is the main threat of the team, but honestly the Incineroar as well. It's just there's just no real way because you're just gonna get hit by a dark type move and then it's over from there.
Yeah, I mean, Calyrex just does not like going into that Terrapagos. Even if Calyrex could do a ton of damage, it would not necessarily too much there, especially because Terrapagos just loves to stay on the field. And then even as well, if you're tarrying onto that onto Starstorm in those turns, actually sorry, because you couldn't really do that, but even if you turn Starstorm on those turns, you're taking out the option of one of your defensive terrors like that Incineroar, and it just felt like it was falling away from Sonic Queen just a little bit too much in that game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Sauna's going to try to use the Wheezing if they were to decide to bring it. It didn't do all that much, but that's mostly because that Incineroar has that helping hand move, which boosted the Surging Strike's damage output even higher than it normally would have done to get that KO onto that Wheezing. The Intimidate from the Incineroar on Sana's side also wasn't that utilized to its best ability, mostly due to the fact that Urshifu can use its Surging Strike's crits against it. So maybe you want to try to pivot into that Rillaboom to really threaten both the opposing Fluttermane that didn't end up coming to the match, while you also can threaten that Choice Scarf Urshifu.
See, the thing that I think Weezing really benefits from is having like that one Pokemon where you're either invalidating an ability or you're invalidating an ability that invalidates the play that you want to make with that Pokemon. And while it's not necessarily a great fit in this current in this current format, something like Slacking, which had a ton of offensive potential, or something like you saw Wolfie run Toadscruel, getting like the benefit of
Mm.
having a base 167 speed Spore. It was it was that those kind of Pokemon that really benefit from it, but I don't necessarily see one on Sonic. Be proven wrong in this second game. I mean, especially if we see Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant seems to be like that kind of Pokemon that likes to benefit from the neutralizing gas as well. But leads are going got double from the double Flutter Mane on the field with Incineroar and the Calyrex Shadow pretty quickly early on here.
Yep. And we don't see any booster energies going to be utilized. Actually, there will be one booster energy. It's going to be on Sana's side. It's going to be the speed booster energy. The opposing Fluttermane on Mikey's side is actually the Choice Specs variant. So it's going to be slower than both of the Calyrex and the Fluttermane on Sana's side, so it is in a very precarious situation. It could try to terrestrialize to try to survive something like a Shadow Ball or a Moon Blast from Sana's Fluttermane, but it also still has to contend with the Astro Barrage attack as well. But you also have this Incineroar on the field, as we are going to be seeing a switch out into a Terrapagos.
Yeah, Sana wanted to face check that early on, but I think it possibly could have been all right to get a little bit offensive on that Flutter Mane, even if it means hitting it with more neutral moves to get rid of that Terra Shard, that Terra Shell, because now you're facing down resisting Incineroar and it completely immune to Terrapagos now, and you are forced to play completely passively because you need to switch out now.
Yeah, interesting situation. Just trying to read what your opponent's trying to do. Typically, you want to use double protect in front of a fake out user, but both of your Pokemon are ghost types, so you're actually immune to the fake out no matter what, unless you terrestrialize into something that would be being able to get hit. But mostly just trying to go for that to just try to scout out the Fluttermane. if you don't end up getting the KO somehow, you could get retaliated and lose a Pokemon. So the safe play is just the best play in that situation to just try to see what your opponent's going to use in terms of your resources. We do see
Mhm.
the Calyrex switching into the back, going into this Incineroar, trying to provide some extra support into the Flutter Mane that could start going for some damage output.
Coming out from the Terapagos, keeping the Terra Shell alive here. Dazzling Gleam on deck for Sauna's Fluttermane over here, hitting on that onto the Incineroar, but barely doing any damage right there. Kitty is hitting that parting shot, but it's going to be hitting on Incineroar, so it's not as important as if you hit that on Fluttermane.
Yep, the parting shot going to be getting that crucial special attack and attack drop onto, I believe it was the Incineroar, which may or may not matter in terms of the damage output, depending on if the Incineroar is actually going to go for an attack. But every damage point matters. We are going to be seeing the switch out into the Urshifu Rapid Strike. So based on the speed tiers, Fluttermane on Sauna's side should still be the fastest due to that boost your energy speed boost early on in turn one. It could go for a free Dazzling Gleam as we saw in a previous turn. And now you're trying to force out the Terastallization on the Urshifu to try to survive an attack. But that means that the Terapagos is also not actually able to Terastallize. So it's a very precarious situation if you're Mikey.
Regardless, I mean, and you might actually be seeing it right here. The terrestrialization is in fact going on to the Urshifu to survive this dazzling gleam. The call from Gerd as per usual, and that is that now the Terapagos doesn't have as much of a threat with that that Stella Terra Starstorm.
Yeah, that's a huge risk to go for to not allow your terrestrialization on Terapagos to go off because that is one of your best ways to get damage output. But it doesn't really matter because if you decide to go for this Calm Mind, you have the Calm Mind leftover set, so you could start getting bulkier and bulkier as the turns go on, and those single target normal type Terra Starstorms in its base form could still do a decent chunk of damage to most Pokemon, but you're really trying to rely on this Urshifu now. Again, it's still not the fastest thing on this field. The Fluttermane is. It could still go for those dazzling gleams to try to pick off the Urshifu in this attack, but it really depends on what this Fluttermane is going to do.
We're looking at a little bit of a calculation here, and it is, in fact, going to take out that Urshifu right there. Does a decent amount of chip damage onto Terapagos, but that Urshifu going down is extremely important. Not much speed control on this team over here, but there is the Terra Starstorm hitting the Incineroar, not doing too much damage, but now losing out on the leftovers. So there is not much potential to get all the way back up to that health, even if that Rillaboom comes on, like we've seen on the team before.
Yeah, knockoff is super critical now that the leftovers is gone. You can't get that repeated healing factor from the leftovers. Calm Mind is now not as safe to try to get the setup because you can't offset the damage output from the leftovers. Incineroar is going to be switching back in. Doesn't really matter all too much. Yes, you do get that drop in attack onto the Incineroar, but Incineroar wouldn't have been doing that much damage to either Pokemon anyway. It's more of a support Pokemon than anything, even though it has the damage output of a very strong attacking physical attacker. And the Fluttermane doesn't really take it that well. So Dazzling Gleam just gets some pure damage output as much as you can. You can bring in that Calyrex that we did see in the back earlier on. The citrus berry is going to be used on the Incineroar, and an Earth Power is going to be shot into the Fluttermane.
Fluttermane still eats those alive, but it kind of depends on what this Incineroar does over here because it could potentially knock it out with a strong move, being that Flare Blitz or that knockoff in there. Fluttermane, as we know, is extremely frail physically, but it looks like Sauna's hovering over the two legendaries that remain and chooses the Ogerpon, which I think honestly is the correct move here. The pressure puts pressure on both of the other players' Pokemon. But just like that, the Flare Blitz is going to take out the Fluttermane, and Sauna's down to her last two.
Yeah, this is not a bad situation. You
Or
still
sorry, my
have
fault.
Yeah, you
She's
still have
not.
3. It's not a bad situation to be in. This Ogerpon is going to be doing so much work considering the fact that the Incineroar on Mikey's end is going to be taking that super effective damage off of Ivy Cudgel with this Wellspring Ogerpon Ivy Cudgel. And then the Terapagos doesn't have that Terastallization, so it cannot gain that extra HP. And it's already so low. And the fact that Ogerpon hits on the physical side means it can bypass those special defense increases from the Calm Mind. So it's starting to look very grim as we see it protect on the Terapagos, trying to protect it just for one extra turn. But the Ivy Cudgel is just going to be redirected into that Incineroar picking up the KO.
I'm just a girl with a big stick, and down goes the cat just like that. Terapagos now is at it's a much more risky position now because Sana has obviously the three Pokemon that remain. You have now a complete invulnerability to Terra Starstorm, if I remember correctly. It's now considered a normal move, right?
Yes, the base form of Terra Starstorm is considered a normal type attack only until it terrestrializes, where it then becomes a Terra Stellar attack.
So yeah, I mean, and especially because now there's you potentially can now terrastallize your Ogerpon, get that special defense boost, and be able to take out this Fluttermane as soon as possible. The spiky shield is going to go up first and foremost, looking like trying to gauge out a protect over here potentially, unless this is a specs version. Actually, it is. But that Moonblast is a terrifying spectacle, and there is the Earth Power that probably is going to take out the Incineroar there. And we're looking at last twos.
Yeah, now the Calyrex is now forced to switch in this situation, which is still a little bit awkward because you still could use the Astro Barrage and take out the Fluttermane, but then the
Wait,
Calyrex,
she's fight.
depending
Wait,
on
wait. She's fighting Terra. I remember now. I think she's
oh, it's
fighting Terra.
fighting. Is it Terra fighting Terra Blast?
I,
Did I miss this on the sheet?
I think it might have
Uh,
been. Hold.
yes, it is. It is Terra fighting Terra Blast. So there is now officially a way for this Terrapagos to be beat if it still has its terrestrialization ready and available.
And that's going to be the one shot on. That is a one hit KO on the Fluttermane. And Ogerpon has redirected this move onto herself. Earth Power going to hit. It's going to be resisted by that grass typing. And now you have a free hit from both of these Pokemon. And Sonic Queen is going to take this game too.
Yep, Sana able to play a masterful set, using getting that Fluttermane in a situation where you can threaten those dazzling gleams to actually hit the Urshifu, force Mikey in a situation that says, okay, I need to terastallize the Urshifu because that is my win condition. But if I do not terastallize my Urshifu, it's going to go down. But that also means if I terastallize my Terapagos, it stays alive. But then the Urshifu goes down. But if I don't terastallize the Terapagos, then it's a bad situation either way. So that's
I
just the
mean,
tough part.
getting rid of the Terra was extremely well played, especially because obviously Terrapagos can't hit two of the Pokemon on Sana's team if it does not get that stellar typing, and that's most of the reason why Calyrex Shadow is really tough into that Terrapagos because it can hit hard with those Stellateras and be able to tank the hits that most of the time that most Pokemon can't really take with that Calyrex Shadow.
Yeah, I believe I'm looking at the POV on Sonazone in the back end production. I believe they had quickly selected their team, so very confident in their ability to play this next match. So we'll have to see. We didn't see the Wheezing this time around; only appeared in the first game. So maybe a quick pivot in terms of play styles and adaptions to see that Wheezing probably wasn't the reason you needed to win this match. Wheezing is definitely a niche opportunity to use, but against the most of the Pokemon that are coming on Mikey's end, you don't really need that. Get rid of those abilities.
Is not. I think Weezing's a good pick in a certain Pokemon, but I don't think at this current moment it would be super helpful. But here we go into this game three. Mikey leading with the ever so deadly Urshifu and Chain-Pao pair, and on the side of Sana you have the Incineroar and Fluttermane. And by far, actually I wouldn't say by far, but it's definitely the fastest on the field now with that photosynthesis game.
Yeah, this is a very good core for Mikey. Urshifu, Rapid Strike, and Champao has been dominating tournaments since all the way back in Regulation D. But one of the weaknesses of that core is a speed booster Flutter Mane, meaning that all of your opponent's Pokemon are now slower than this Flutter Mane, and the fact that both of them are weak to fairy type spread damage like Dazzling Gleam means that only one of them could Terastallize. The other one could try to go for a Protect, but it doesn't mean you're still going to take a lot of damage.
Yeah, and especially with fake out pressure on the field too, it is a risk to try to get something super hard out of this. And just like that, you see the retreat from the Urshifu into Rillaboom. The first time we've seen this Pokemon in this set so far. Grassy terrain is being set up now, and the terastallization coming out from Mikey, going directly on top of that Chain Pow to, I think it's most likely Ghost. It is the Ghost right in there, avoiding the fake out damage and potentially hitting this Flutter Mane for a lot of damage.
Fake Out going to be going to the Rillaboom slot that originally was that Urshifu. Dazzling Gleam doing about 50% to that Shenpao. That's going to be good damage. And the Icicle Crush just barely picks up
Oof.
the KO. Just a sliver of HP remaining, and that is going to be huge. You have to
Oh,
now deal with Sucker Punch mind games with this Shenpao.
this, and now you yeah, it's just an RPS at this point of which is going to happen now. And if you play it wrong, you are losing a Pokemon. If you play it right, you are forcing them to do nothing with their turn. So probably you're going to be seeing that Icicle Crash, or actually, sorry, my big Sacred Sword over here on onto Incineroar now, calling it out, but the uh, the Rillaboom is unable to move right there. But honestly, I don't even know what happened there. I didn't even see half of the words move up on screen.
Yeah, it was Fake Out into Incineroar, Sucker Punch into the protected Flutter Mane, so it was pretty much a null turn. But now the Fake Out is gone, so you don't have that easy access to stopping the Incineroar for going something like a Flare Blitz into the Rillaboom or a Parting Shot into either Pokemon, or you could go for Flare Blitz into Champao, try to break that stash and bring it down. Well, its stash has already been broken, but try to get that one hit KO here. You do bring in this Ogre Pond to try to keep the Fluttermane alive as much as possible. The booster energy is now gone though for the rest of this game.
And there is the Urshifu Grassy Glide coming out, doing a good chunk of almost half of the damage right there. And then the knockoff going directly into the Urshifu to take out that Choice Scarf. It has now been equalized to the 160, the most likely 163 speed slot right there, as Urshifu does. So now the Flutter Mane has a little bit of free reign if Urshifu's on the field, especially if Aqua Jet hasn't been procced.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough situation. The Rillaboom provides so much damage output, and I don't believe it's been intimidated yet. So it can offer those strong wood hammers both into the Ogre Pond and the Incineroar itself, because now you have this Urshifu, despite, it not having protected spin choice lock, but the knockoff actually allows it to be more flexible in terms of its attack usage at the cost of not being as fast as what Fluttermane would be normally. We do see the follow me. That's something you pretty much always want to be using in front of an Urshifu. Make it have to use a non-water type move like a close combat or especially a U-turn. It will pick up the KO. It's going to be pivoting back out into the back.
That's a little bit of a rough one right there. Losing that Ogre Pond instantly in one turn is rough, but it did its job and got the redirection off. However, there has not been a terastallization. Sorry, there has been a terastallization. So the Calyrex Shadow Rider now has a really good positioning, no matter what comes in anymore. You've seen the Incineroar, you've seen then there's the Terapagos, you've seen the Rillaboom. So now you are just trying to play the game of how fast can you boost up your funny little horse and try to pick something up. But just like that, the Flare Blitz does pick up the KO onto the Rillaboom. Very nicely done right there from Sana. And I think that's a pretty fair exchange right up there, because now the Rillaboom's gone. You don't have to worry about that Grassy Glide as much, but brings in the Calyrex directly after.
Yeah, the Flare Blitz picking up that Rillaboom does force an additional switch in. The Terapagos now sitting on the field without its terrestrialization, the signature feature of the DLC, is a little unfortunate. The Urshifu actually going to be switching back in? It does not have that choice scarf. It got knocked off on a previous turn, so it has to deal its damage while being slower than this opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider, should I say. The Shadow Rider should be able to pick up a KO from this range with something like a Side Shock because it's super effective into the fighting type. And then you can get that +1 and continue to scale your damage into that Terapagos.
Absolutely. It's also really they need all she also needs to be patient about getting rid of that Terapagos because there's still leftovers, because there's still the grassy terrain, the health regeneration is going to be nice, and very nicely done from Mikey to not let that happen there and taking the no damage. Actually, sorry, not the no damage, but it's not going to be a weakened defense straight into Chain Pow. But Psyshock should do a quality amount of damage here. It's going to pick up the KO actually, and just like that, you get a +1 on the Grim Nay, and this game could potentially be just have won on that turn.
Yeah, Psyshock normally, despite it being a special type attack, it does hit on the physical defense side. Even though Qian Pao is immune to its own sort of ruin, it still is taking too much damage from the Psyshock and will end up losing its life in the meantime while the Tropicos tries to set up with a Calm Mind, which it does. But unfortunately, again, the leftovers is going to be knocked off by the Incineroar. No guaranteed healing outside of these grassy terrain, which should be disappearing right now, as I say. So healing is gone. You have one more Pokemon in the back is your Rapid Strike Urshifu without the Choice Scarf again. It got knocked up earlier in this match. So now this Calyrex has the ability to sweep the rest of this match.
And now we just gotta just see what the decision is here because the Psyshock takes out that, and I think that's the correct choice. You reliably take out the Urshifu, doesn't have a protect option on deck. You parting shot into the Terapagos to lower that special attack stat while it's trying to boost itself up. The Aqua Jet is gonna come up, but not do enough damage to take out the Calyrex. Yet the Psyshock does, in fact, take out the Urshifu, and it looks like Terapagos is all alone in its glory on the field right now for Mikey.
Yeah, Terapagos really doesn't have a great way to win in this. Even at that +1, it's still not picking up the KO that it needs into this Calyrex. It does go for a parting shot, resetting that special attack back down to null as the Incineroar does get the free switch, resetting that fake out for later. You can bring in the Flutter Mane once again, which should be faster than almost every variant of Terapagos. So you could go for an easy terrestrializing Terra fighting into the Terapagos, or you can just go for straight damage with something like a Psyshock or a Moonblast.
Very nice to hold on to those Terras late on into the game just because you want to wait to make sure that you can reliably use it to knock out these Terrapagoses. And the Fighting Terra did I saw it and just kind of thought about like the more defensive sets where they use fairy to avoid getting hit by the quad effective dark type moves, but this is a lot more offensive here, and it very much worked out in the end. The protect is going to come out, but that is just biding some more time. There is no recovery, there is no grassy terrain, no leftovers, and it looks like Mikey is going to have to concede this game or take the rest of the beating.
Yeah, Terra fighting is not a common terrestrialization type for Calyrex. Like you said, it's typically like Terra Fairy in conjunction with something like a Draining Kiss to try to get that extra healing with a Calm Mind or a Nasty Plot 2 to just increase your damage output. And then, as we just saw, the Terapagos is going to be going down. Sonic Queen actually going to be fighting to a 2-2 record now, and congrats to them.
Little bit of a different set than we usually see from the Calyrex Shadows, but Sonic Queen doing very, very well to take that set after dropping game one. And we have seen some great Pokemon so far, and we will continue to do so in the next couple of rounds. Gerd, we have been there has been some great Pokemon being played, and we're finally seeing the true villains of this format in the Calyrexes.
I mean, the Calyrexes, again, have been one of the strongest restricted since they were introduced in the last generation. I was one that started playing VGC last generation at the beginning at Series 1, and I saw how dominant Calyrex Shadow Rider was and how dominant Ice Rider was in particular, especially on those hard Trick Room teams. But in a meta without Dynamax, and you have those spread types damage, mind you, Calyrex Shadow was nerfed coming into this generation. Its special attack
God, I
output
know.
on Astroraj was actually 10 base power points higher than what it is in this current game. So just imagine what it was in the last generation when it was still doing so much damage. It was
It
very
could have
strong,
been
especially
worse.
in double restricted when Zacian was also at its peak of power. So you're seeing the potential that Calyrex has. I know that in late stage Reg G Part 1, if we want to call it that, like worlds, a lot of people were running either Fairy or Dark, particularly. Dark was great into opposing prankster Pokemon to just survive, and you also could resist opposing Calyrex Astral Barrages as a way to set up against them if they weren't running the Dark variant too.
And that's not even we're not even mentioning the more obnoxious one, the one that can set up Trick Room by itself, tank so many hits by itself, has access to the brand new clear amulet item that just makes it impossible to intimidate. So its
Yep.
usual counter most likely would have been Incineroar. Can't even deal that much, do that much offsetting to it. These Pokemon
That's
have benefited.
Calyrex.
Yeah,
That's
they've
Calyrex. Yep.
it's the villain. It's the villain. I'm telling you.
Yep.
Oh
But
my
before
god.
we go into our break, once again, we are hosting a charity stream tournament for Toys for Tots. So if you want to get in the action and get into the auspicious nature of this tournament, let's try to get into that goal.
Oh,
$400. Do you know what the goal was for $400 off the top of your head, or?
so we have hit the $400
Oh, we have.
goal.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So big shout out to everybody who has completed who has helped us complete the $400 goal. We are currently still at the 400 exactly. The new goal has been set for $500. So if you haven't yet, spread the word.
Let's go for
Maybe if you
500 this
can,
time.
let's go for 500 this time.
That's hopefully the goal. Shout out to Michael running this tournament for a great cause. And let's take a quick break going into this round number 5. We're halfway through this tournament on day number 1, and we're excited to see more stream matches coming up soon.
Hey.